A pale moon hung low over the High Republic's frontier world, its light skeletal against the obsidian sky. On a windswept plateau, an ancient shrine to the living force crouched like a sentinel. Dawn had not yet broken when its marble altar was found slick with blood. No storm had passed, yet crimson spattered every carved relief, pooling at the feet of etched deities long forgotten. A single set of footprints led away, too small to belong to a Jedi, but too deliberate to be random. The victim was Master Rolan, revered for guiding fledgling colonies. Her robes lay torn, fingers curled as if still clutching hope. Yet hope had slipped through her grasp. No sign of struggle marked the ground beyond the altar's edge. No weapon remained. Only the echo of a whisper in the Force, a voice like silk and poison that promised silence. By midday, a shuttle's glow pierced the horizon. Jedi investigators, summoned from Coruscant, arrived in measured stride. Master Silen, whose calm bore the weight of 10 council terms, stepped from the ramp. His Padawan, Plagueis, followed with hesitant grace, eyes wide at the blood-stained reliefs. Neither spoke. The Force spoke enough, thrumming with disquiet beneath Silen's skin. Silen placed a gloved hand on the altar's rim. He traced a spiral rune carved centuries ago, now flecked with red. This symbol, he murmured, breath warm against frosted air, predates Republic expansion. Yet its lines have no place among Jedi teachings. Plagueis knelt, lips brushing the stain. Master, I sense a third presence, neither living nor lost. The word Sith hovered between them, fragile as dawn's first light. They surveyed the surrounding ruins. Broken columns leaned like broken men. Torch sconces, long dead, lined walls where tunnels yawned below. The air smelled of ozone and old regret. Somewhere in that labyrinth lay secrets older than the archives of Ossus. Plagueis found a charred fragment of wood, scorched in a pattern that matched the rune's spiral. A hidden ritual, she whispered, performed at midnight, beneath the stars. Silen nodded. A tool, blood, to steer events, to shape Republic policy from the shadows. He scanned Plagueis' face. We must speak only in riddles, lest we draw the assassin's attention. Seek the High Chancellors whose ambitions align too neatly with this atrocity. Plagueis rose, resolve sharpening her features. If we expose this hand, do we risk playing into their design? He allowed a pause. Perhaps. But knowledge is the blade that will cut their strings. Night fell once more before they returned to their shuttle. In the hush, Plagueis glanced back at the altar, now swarmed with forensic droids. Laser grids traced elegant arcs across the bloody glyph. Master, she said softly. What did you hear? Silen closed his eyes. A breath. A promise that the Republic will be hollow before dawn. He opened his eyes, sorrow shining within. We must move swiftly, before this whisper becomes a roar. As the shuttle lifted, the lone figure watched from the tunnel's mouth. Robes darker than moonless void, frames still as stone. No face showed. Only the faintest gleam of hunger in unseen eyes. The figure slipped into shadow, leaving behind a message scrawled in blood. Balance is an illusion. Below it, the footprints faded into dust. The shuttle's engines died against the quiet night. In that stillness, the galaxy held its breath. Somewhere in the Senate, ambivalent votes waited to be swayed. And in hidden sanctums, a darker ambition smiled, knowing its blades were sharpened by fear and secrecy. They landed after dawn's second glow, stepping from the maintenance shuttle into the Senate's hidden belly. The elevator doors receded into darkness, welcoming Master Silan and Padawan Plagueis into corridors older than any Republic record. Above, senators draped in silks debated planetary quotas. Below, the galaxy's heart throbbed with a secret pulse, a labyrinth of tunnels, catacombs carved in ancient stone, where only the bold or the lost dared to tread. They advanced in silence, boots ringing on metal grills. Data conduits ran overhead like veins, humming faintly with unfiltered chatter. Torch sconces mounted between reclaimed pillars spit golden light over walls streaked with centuries of grime and repainting. Here, chiseled panels held faint sigils, twisting tendrils that coiled into unknowable shapes, the whispers of Sith architects long exiled. Plagueis's fingers traced a blossom-like rune, its loops edged with crimson residue. "Not Jedi," she murmured. "These markings speak of deeper corruption." Silan inclined his head, torchlight dancing across his furrowed brow. "Follow the echoes." He pressed his palm against the damp stone. "We must find where Sith voices were first heard." The air shifted. A chill breeze stirred in a sealed corridor. Torches guttered. A murmur rose from beyond a buttressed door. A distant prayer. A snatch of chanting. It slipped through a crack and made their blood hum. They breached a heavy portcullis, revealing a circular chamber lit by flickering braziers. The walls bore concentric carvings of coiling serpents, pressing outward like the legs of an insect. In the center, a dais held ritual implements. Chalices with blackened rims, sacrificial knives dulled by time, and a shallow basin stained faintly red. Plagueis crouched beside the basin and inhaled. "Blood once fed here. This sanctifies deceit." A voice rasped from the shadows. "Your faith blinds you." They spun, lightsabers hissing to life. In a hidden alcove, a masked acolyte stepped forward, robes swirling. Behind him, two figures emerged, faces concealed, hands clenched around curved blades. Silan's torch revealed a third runic band carved around the vaulted ceiling, an enchantment designed to muffle the Force, to let only darkness thrive. "Who commands you?" Silan's tone was measured but firm. "Reveal these Sith, or I will end your defilement." A grin flickered behind the mask. "You chase whispers in these tunnels, Jedi, while our true master whispers through the Senate." The Acolyte's blade flicked in torchlight, casting warped shadows on the runes. "By the time you reach the Chamber of Worlds, our puppets will have written you into myth." He gestured, and the other two lunged. Plagueis spun, blade arcing like silver rain, forcing one back against the coiling serpent motif. Silan sidestepped the second attacker, pressing the acolyte against the dais. Sparks flew as metal kissed metal, but the runes above pulsed, bright as wounded gemstone, draining their strength. Silan's grip faltered. The acolyte seized the moment, slashing across a brazier. Flames roared to life, swallowing the chamber in a living inferno. They retreated along the tunnel, adrenaline sharpening each breath. Flames licked the rune panels, releasing acrid smoke that choked the corridors. Their boots slipped on fallen embers. Above them, the Senate's stoic, marbled floor waited. But whispers still followed, half-heard promises of greatest power, of old ways restored. Breathing hard, Plagueis glanced back. They planned to burn these runes, and any evidence with them. But their fire will not wash away truths. The Senate's foundations tremble, Master. Silan's eyes glinted. We must deliver these echoes to the Council. Expose the tunnels, the toxins, the conspirators. The Republic must awaken before it falls to its will. They found one hidden terminal, a ghost console buried beneath rubble. With deft fingers, Plagueis interfaced the COM port, transmitting the chamber's schematics and audio files of intercepted whispers. Each syllable was a nail in a coffin built for democracy. When the upload completed, the flames consumed the terminal's casing. They watched sparks drift upward, unbroken by any breeze. Rising toward the exit, they passed torches dancing over carved flutes of stone. The acid tang of burnt incense lingered. Through narrow shafts, they glimpsed Council guards in polished armor, unaware of the Serpent's coils tightening beneath their feet. At last, steps rang on Senate marble. Silan adjusted his robes, extinguished his saber, and nodded to Plagueis. Let the light guide us forward. Their figures slipped between columns into the morning brightness where votes would be cast, unaware of the midnight coup woven below. Above ground, Coruscant's spires shimmered with promise. Yet beneath, a darker promise had been whispered, and would soon be heard by every senator on every world. Morning light found Coruscant's spires glinting over hemmed-in Senate balconies, the world's heartbeat drumming through marble corridors. As Master Silan and Padawan Plagueis carried their evidence skyward, another shadow had already slithered into the Jedi Order's ranks. Avara Tal, a young knight celebrated for her unwavering ethics, stood alone before the Hall of Justice, summoned at dawn to answer charges she never imagined. Only hours earlier, Avara had delivered an impassioned plea to the Council. Corruption within the Republic's governorates undermined the High Republic's noble mission. Her words ignited debate and unease. Yet as her voice faded in the chamber, officials discovered traces of sabotage at the Coruscant core reactor, anomalous code fragments and skewed data logs pointing to her personal console. The evidence was incontrovertible. Summoned in silver-edged manacles, Avara's violet blade was stripped away, leaving only the echo of its memory. She met the tribunal's gaze with steely calm. I did no wrong, she insisted, voice as clear as polished durasteel. Yet a hollow recording sealed her fate. The reactor's inner chamber, captured seconds before catastrophe. In the flicker of static, a lone silhouette manipulated the controls, its hands gloved, its face hidden. Then the feed shattered, cracked by a jagged tear that marred the image like a lightning scar. That crack became her crucible. It split the recording, fracturing truth into doubt. The damaged hollow played on loop in every tribunal gallery, its broken lines etching shame into every viewer's mind. Silan watched from the front row, agony in his eyes. Plagueis stood behind him, jaw set in quiet fury. Both recognized the sabotage signature, curving glyphs matching the Sith code they had unearthed beneath the Senate. Before the Council, Avara reached toward the fractured display. That crack was deliberate, she whispered. Someone shattered your proof to frame me. But procedure bound the judges. Invidious charges of treason demanded swift judgment. The mere accusation stripped her of rank, voice, and place. Even her reputation, built on years of service, crumbled beneath the weight of falsehood. Condemned to house arrest within the temple's lowest spire, Avara was escorted through silent corridors lined with sentinel statues. In her cell, she traced faint rune patterns etched into the stone wall, spirals of unity stained by betrayal. Her braided hair, once bound for ceremony, lay undone on the stone bunk. She drank thin broth from silent droids, its taste echoing the verdict that stole her voice. She recalled Master Roland's final lesson: vigilance against darkness in the light. Each night she whispered Jedi chants, striving to keep hope alive within iron and shadow. Meanwhile, Silan and Phalis withdrew to shadowed catacombs, determined to expose the frame. The cracked hollow was their only lead, its fracture lines channeling Sith enchantments meant to deflect scrutiny. Phalis brought a stolen code scanner, tracing residual dark currents. "It emanates from deep beneath the Justice Hall," she said, voice echoing in the vaulted chamber. "Not from that saboteur's hand, but from an inner vault." By nightfall, they slipped past patrols into the tribunal's underbelly. Kiln-black corridors stretched before them, torchlight barely piercing their length. Threads of overheard Senate debate drifted down through ventilation shafts, a symphony of ambition unaware of its strings. They reached a sealed door marked by crescent moon runes and ancient locks, the archivist's vault. Silan's gloved hand danced across hidden controls. "Once inside, we retrieve the unbroken footage," he explained. "We restore Avara's name and reveal the true traitor." Phalis nodded, heart drumming. Their comms whispered with coded urgency. The lock released with a hiss. They entered a circular chamber lined with hollow drives and crystalline databanks. Above, a curved viewport framed senatorial domes, oblivious to the betrayal that brewed below. Phalis inserted the data probe into the central drive and watched as encrypted files streamed across the console. A tremor rippled through the vault, an engineered quake. Sparks arced along the ceiling as a hidden trap activated, sealing the door behind them. Phalis's eyes widened. "They knew we'd come," she breathed. Before she could move, holographic panels flickered, showing the uncracked recording. The reactor chamber, captured intimately, revealing not Avara, but a Sith operative draped in dark robes, his face hidden beneath a skull-white mask. He worked methodically, planting the evidence before disappearing into service vents. The image was clear, irrefutable. Silan's voice was steel. "This is the truth they cannot ignore." Behind them, mechanisms groaned, secondary defenses activating. Metal plates slid from the walls. Phalis grabbed the data module. "We have it," she said, turning toward Silan. "Now we fight our way back." They ignited their sabers, blades humming in the dim vault. The Sith codes etched into the doorframe pulsed with dark resonance as the first security drones rattled into the chamber. Silan ignited his blade's opposite edge, its pale gold light meeting Phalis's azure in a silent oath. "Onward," he intoned, stepping into the narrowing corridor with calm resolve. Phalis fell in step beside him, her every doubt washed away by the fires of purpose. Together, they advanced toward freedom and justice, determined to uncrack the illusion and restore the honor of a wounded order. While Master Silan and Phalis raced to unveil the truth within Coruscant's bowels, another threat crept through the temple's grand facade. Word of the unbroken recording, exposing a Sith hand, had barely reached the council chamber when whispers spread of a gathering at the gates. By dusk, a masked cult formed an eerie procession beneath the ivory columns, their purpose hidden by swirling haze. At the outer steps, ceremonial braziers flickered. Hooded figures emerged through smoke that drifted like living specters, curling between polished pillars. Each bore a metal faceplate, an elongated visor shaped like a veiled skull, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly in crimson. Their robes, black as starlit void, swallowed torchlight, leaving only their silhouettes visible. A hush fell over the guards, who found their prod fingers heavy and their senses dulled. Unseen by most, small devices nestled among the braziers hissed, releasing odorless mist laced with force-suppressing toxins. The vapors drifted upward, seeping through the intricate latticework above the gates. Moments later, breath came labored. Knights on watch leaned against marble, eyes unfocused. Their connection to the Force, normally a beacon of awareness, flickered, obstructed by the cult's engineered poison. The hooded ranks stepped forward in perfect silence, crossing the threshold where no unmasked visitor dared linger. Marble columns, carved with scenes of Jedi valor, now served as mute witnesses to this betrayal. Smoke billowed, drifting past reliefs of ancient masters as the cultists passed in solemn unity. Their footsteps, synchronized and soft, echoed through the grand hall's arched corridors, now empty of vigilance. Padawan Rena, posted near the main entrance, rubbed her temples, struggling to center her focus. The Force felt brittle in her chest, like a faint hum drowned by thunder. She staggered, staff saber still unlit, and watched the masked shapes glide by. "Master!" she called, but her voice betrayed her. When she turned, the corridor lay empty. The cult was already inside. Silan, returning from their narrow corridor triumph, reached the gateway atrium just as the entrance seals hissed closed. He found Phalis crouched beside Rena, supporting her underarm. Toxins, he realized. They used smoke to blind our senses. He drew deep breath, forcing the tainted air from his lungs. We cannot rely on raw perception. Inside, the cultists formed a ring around the temple's inner sanctum, where holocrons, archives, and secret annals were housed. At their center stood a hooded figure raising a ceremonial chalice. Crimson mist poured from its lip, coiling around the polished floor tiles. The ceiling's vaults captured smoke like stained glass, transforming mist into spectral chandeliers. Phalis ignited her lightsaber, its cerulean glow piercing the gloom. Silan summoned kinetic pressure to disperse the haze. Burning motes scattered in the air as he advanced. "Sith gas," he murmured. "Engineered to block force feedback while preserving motor control. A sophisticated trap." The lead cultist lifted the chalice. "We honor the old blood," a voice rasped from behind the mask, resonating with hidden modulation. "We reforge the temple in darkness, preparing the stage for the true heirs of power." He poured the remaining crimson liquid into the floor's mosaics, marking an unholy sigil that glowed with malevolent intent. Silan struck first, rushing the dais with disciplined ferocity. Phalis followed, sweeping sparks as her blade arced through the emblem. Cultists reacted, drawing wicked curved blades that hummed with dark resonance. Each clash released sharper clouds of toxin, forcing Silan to teleport his force shield to clear the air in front of him. Rena stumbled to her feet, igniting her own blade as she fought through grogginess. Blades sang, and shadows danced against marble. The ceremony's centerpiece shattered under Silan's blow, spilling dark gas that the Jedi swiftly contained with code spheres, forced bubbles of purified air. Phalis severed rune-inscribed vials from the chalice's base, snapping them with precise blows. The masked figures recoiled. Their ritual broken, they retreated through side passages, knowledge of hidden exits unmistakable. Yet one remained. The chalice bearer. Silan advanced, torchlight catching the edge of its mask. "Who commands you?" he demanded. The figure paused, torchlight reflecting in jeweled runes. new balance, it whispered. The Jedi's certainty ends tonight. Then it vanished into obstructed corridors, leaving only a broken mask to clatter across the tiles. Silence reclaimed the hall. Phalis extinguished her blade and knelt to gather the scattered chalice shards. "They know our temple too well," she said, voice low. "They planned this infiltration precisely." Silan surveyed the runic sigils scorched into the floor. "They aim to poison our order before it can strike back. We must purge every hidden chamber, secure every corridor." He pressed a data chip into Rena's hand. "Take this to the Council immediately. We cannot let whispers become dominion." As the masked cult's pall lifted from the temple gates, the first torchlight of dawn filtered through glass domes above. Marble columns stood cleansed but bruised. The Jedi, shaken yet unbroken, prepared to follow every hidden passage, flush out every shadow left by deception. And so, beneath the marble arches where serenity once reigned, the Order readied itself for a war fought in silence as much as with sabers, knowing that the next breath might carry smoke, or a new revelation that could shatter their foundations. In the silent heart of the Jedi Temple, the archives lay beneath vaulting arches, each corridor lined with holocron slots crafted of ivory and steel. Here, knowledge slept. Histories of the High Republic, star maps, and the intimate teachings of generations. But when Master Silan and Padawan Phalis returned from the depths of deception, a new silence greeted them. Emptiness. A holocron door swung open, its locking rune dark. Inside, expectant grooves lay bare. Two others nearby bore the same vacancy. Scholars in white robes pressed trembling fingertips to the empty casings. "They've vanished," whispered Archivist Renlal, voice muffled beneath her cowl. "Without trace, without record." Phalis crouched before the nearest slot. "These weren't mere texts," she said. "They were catalogued as forbidden lore. Sith alchemy, hidden in the darkest corners of the Order's history." She tapped the rim. "We found interviews with a long-lost scholar, crediting techniques no Jedi should possess." Silan's gaze flicked upward, where vaulted murals portrayed Jedi masters guiding new apprentices. Now the images seemed to watch with sullen reproach. If someone smuggled those records out, they know precisely what to remove and what we need to find. Archival droids stirred among the stacks, their mechanical arms whirring in anxious patterns. Their data portfolios blinked with warning lights. "Sir," a droid said, voice tinny in the hush. "Incoming subspace request. Encrypted." Silan nodded. "Open it." A projection shimmered to life above the console. Hazy pixels resolved into the pale face of a Jedi scholar known only as Kael Demir, missing these past cycles. His eyes held urgent shadows. "If you see this," his voice cracked, "know that I uncovered a Sith grimoire buried beneath Ossus. They misstated its authorship, claiming Republic usage. I tried to expose the deception. They silenced me, but the techniques remain, embedded in texts you cannot trust. Seek the smuggler Varel in Lower Coruscant's quarter." Then the signal ended, the holocron slot's data purged with a final, sorrowful click. Phalis's breath caught. "He risked everything to warn us." She rose, torchlight reflecting in her determined eyes. "We must find Varel and recover Kael's report." Silan placed a hand on her shoulder. "First, we preserve what remains." He gestured to the empty slots. "Mark every missing volume. Catalogue their titles from memory. Then we seal the archives against further theft." He swept a communicator. "Alert temple security. No entry without master-level clearance." Renlal bowed. "As you wish, Master." They worked swiftly, filling data chips with every title lost. Dark transmutation, force veil techniques, blood rune synthesis. Each name sounded more ominous than the last. In corridors once filled with whispered study, only shutters closed against prying eyes now clicked shut. Night fell, and torchlight dimmed to soft embers. Phalis guided Silan to a narrow staircase spiraling downward, an auxiliary exit used by researchers granted special dispensation. "To Dolores Street," she said, recalling Kyle's contact. "Varl runs a bookstall under the old spice market." Silan nodded. "Time is short. The Sith Infiltration gains ground each cycle." They descended. Below, the temple's base level thrummed with life. Traders hawking exotic wares, spice aromas drifting over stone. In a cramped alley, a stall of battered ledger cases sat sheltered beneath a tattered banner. A hunched figure in ragged robes counted credits. His eyes flickered as they approached. "Varl," Phalis said softly. "We seek Kyle Dimir's report." The smuggler's gaze darted to Phalis's council signet. He paled. "You know his fate," he whispered. "They found him on Ossus, drained of his blood and memory wiped. But his notes, I smuggled them here." He lifted a weathered datapad covered in glyphs. "This, my only copy." Silan took it, scanning the file headers. "These hold the missing chapters?" Varl nodded. He encoded them as hollow slices, fragmented to avoid detection, but someone's been buying them. Phalis pressed 2 fingers to her temple. "Tracks lead to the temple's inner spires. They're orchestrating this from within." Varl lowered his voice. "Be careful. There's talk of a masked circle, disciples who gather at midnight. They call themselves the Serpent's Tongue." A shiver traced Silan's spine. "The name matches the runes we found." He looked to Phalis. "We have what we need. Let's return before dawn." The datapad's glow illuminated Varl's lined face. "May the Force guide you," he said, slipping back into shadow. They departed the alley, mindful of curious eyes. A rising breeze carried the scents of fire-spiced nuts and ozone from distant lightning forges. Above, the temple's steps gleamed under twin moons. Back inside, Silan replaced the datapad within his robe. Phalis carried her saber unlit. "We unveil this deception," she vowed, "and restore the Jedi's trust in their own knowledge." He placed a hand upon the nearest holocron slot. "First, we must shield these archives, but after, we bring the Serpent's Tongue into the light." Above them, marble columns stood silent, the empty slots waiting to be reborn. Between stone and star, the echoes of stolen lore stirred, guiding the Jedi toward the next threshold, uncovering a cult masked by deception, ready to strike at the heart of truth itself. A mist-shrouded moon rose over Vostax II's frozen wilds as Master Silan and Padawan Phalis emerged from their shuttle. A distress signal had lured them here. A Republic patrol vanished after reporting black blades and sudden silence. The wind whistled between frost-crusted pines as they followed disrupted footprints to an open clearing. At its center, a single black sword jutted from the ice, its hilt pulsing with a faint crimson glow. Vibroblade design was unmistakably Sith-forged, the metal engraved with cold glyphs known only from ruined temples. No hand grip, no sheath, just a shaft driven into the frozen ground like a grim monument. Phalis knelt beside it, frost stiffening her gloves. No sign of bodies, no trails beyond this point, she murmured, voice lost in the swirling fog. Silan pressed his palm to the blade's dark core. The force recoiled, bruised by malice. They ambushed the patrol without warning, he said, and left nothing but this. A soft crunch drew their gaze to the forest's edge. A lone trooper, uniform shredded, staggered forward, eyes wide with shock. He collapsed against a pine, breath ragged. Silan knelt, activating his med probe. No wounds. The man's armor bore no blade marks, only frost where injuries should have been. "They don't use ordinary weapons," the trooper gasped. "We heard steel." Then nothing. His voice faded. Silan rose. "They strike without warning or trace." Phalis pressed the trooper's arm in encouragement. "He'll recover. We must secure that sword." Above them, mist thickened into walls of ghostly white. From its depths, distant echoes drifted, soft footfalls and low chanting. Hooded figures advanced through the gloom, masks gleaming faintly in torchlight. Serpent-like runes traced their cloaks. The serpent's tongue had followed them here. Silan drew his lightsaber, its amber blade hissing to life. Phalis ignited hers, cerulean fire cutting through haze. The cultists formed a circle, weapons raised but silent. No challenge cry, only the hum of deadly intent. Silan advanced, his saber's light flickering across frozen embers. "Release the patrol, or face justice," he called. One figure stepped forward, lifting a chalice filled with viscous red fluid. With a slow tilt, he poured it onto the clearing's frost. The liquid hissed, vanishing into tendrils of vapor. "Blood and fear," the masked leader intoned. "Fuel for our shadows." He tapped the black sword's pommel. "This is but the first sacrifice." Phalis lunged, but the mist roared, hiding the cultists' movements. Silan carved an arc through vapor, forcing acolytes back. Blades clashed, each strike ringing clear. No scorch marks, no splinters, just clean cuts that evaporated in the cold air. The Sith blades severed branches and armor alike, then left the wounded to vanish into the snow. The patrol's survivors would be next. Phalis seized the chance to shatter a flask at the leader's feet. The red mist surged, then recoiled from her saber's purified light. Silan sprinted, grasped the black sword, and slammed it against an ancient pine. Its glow dimmed, the hilt's pulse slowing under his force grip. The cultists hesitated, then melted back into the trees, vanishing with a final hiss of flame and shadow. The mist parted, revealing smashed supply crates and empty compods. The trooper stirred, eyes blinking against the dawn's weak light. "They left. That's all," he whispered. Phalis extinguished her blade. "We must study this weapon. Its craftsmanship reveals their forge." Silan nodded, hefting the black sword. "Take it to the archives. If we learn how it was made, we can trace its origin." The trooper rose on shaking legs. "I'll help." He snapped to attention, duty restored in his eyes. Above them, the fog retreated beneath Vostax's pale sun. Footprints led back toward the shuttle and the path to truth. But the memory of those vanished patrols would not fade. The Sith had shown how easily life could be erased. No wound, no trace, only silence and fear. As they departed the clearing, Phalis looked back at the empty sword's resting place.
"They hunt in shadows," she said. "We must be faster."
Scylan's hand closed on the blade's cold hilt.
"Then we hunt them, before another world succumbs to silence."
They returned into the forest's hush, bearing a single black sword and the resolve to end its curse. In the sanctum above the archives, Master Scylan and Padawan Phalis paused before a frost-veiled window that framed the council's hidden chamber. Beyond its glass, torchlight revealed 7 Jedi Masters gathered around a circular dais. The black sword lay on a low plinth, a silent testament to dangers stalking the Order. Scylan unrolled a data scroll. "Esteemed Masters," he began, voice echoing in polished stone. "We present proof of a dual onslaught. Cultists beneath the Senate and Sith steel striking on mist-shrouded plains. We've lost patrols without trace. Our own gates were penetrated by toxin. The Serpent's tongue weaves through Senate ducts and temple crypts alike." A hush fell. Master Thalson, veteran of the hyperspace wars, folded his robes. A darkness crawling beneath marble and mist. This reeks of external evil. Sith we deemed dead are stirring underground. He touched the frosted pane as if to feel that betrayal beyond. Across from him, Master Kira's eyes flared. "No, this wound is self-inflicted. Evidence framing Knight Avara Tal was planted by insiders. When we distrust each other, the Sith need not approach." Her accusation hung heavy in the still air. Master Orin, leaning against a column carved with Jedi iconography, spoke softly. "Both are true. Sith exploit our fractures to mask their advance. They sow distrust, then strike unseen." His silhouette merged with frosted runes as torches swayed. Master Lysara held a crystalline vial filled with red residue. This toxin at the gates, foreign to Jedi alchemy, disabled our guards. That is external sabotage designed to blind us. She met Scylan's gaze. "We must seal every vent and hallway with anti-toxin sweeps." Master Hadrian, scholar of Sith lore, stroked his beard. Yet that same toxin circulated through Senate climate shafts. Inner circle complicity. Someone high above empowered them. He tapped the scroll, indicating matching runes in the catacombs and corridors. Silence settled, heavy as stone. Each master weighed the evidence. Beyond the frost, Coruscant's lights gleamed, an oblivious world unaware of this frail debate waged in hidden heights. Scylan placed the black sword on the marble table. This weapon kills without wounding. No wounds, no corpse, only fear. It embodies the threat, present, before we even perceive it. Phalis stepped forward with calm resolve. "We propose a unified task force. Scour the temple's secret passages, fortify Senate ducts, and deploy swift response units to remote worlds. Only combined efforts can repel this shadow." Orin raised his hand in a final accord. "Agreed. We merge our insights and strengths, but above all, we must heal our divisions. If we fracture, the Sith will consume us from within." One by one, each master inclined. A silent pact forged in candlelight. Behind the frosted window, their silhouettes shimmered, half in shadow, half in resolve, ready to strike at the darkness lurking within and without. Phalis pressed her palm to the glass, frost collapsing beneath her warmth. "At least they choose unity," she whispered. Scylan's hand closed over hers. "Unity?
will be our blade.
As the conclave dispersed, corridors were lined with silent statues. The echo of their vow fluttered in the vaults, a promise of unwavering vigilance. In the quiet aftermath, Silan and Phalis knew the true test had only just begun. Commander Silan's message crackled through Elira's datapad as she prepared for departure. Seek the fallen temple on Jarum. We suspect Sith alchemy. Now, alone in the docking bay, the Padawan donned cold weather gear and silenced her comlink. The shuttle's engines hummed, carrying her to a world forgotten by Republic charts. She emerged onto Jarum's ashen plains beneath a sky of charcoal clouds. Winds carried dust like silver ash across her visor. Each step toward the ruin sifted through brittle soil, stirring echoes of ancient worship, long twisted by dark science. At the shattered gates, Elira paused. Carved reliefs of a smiling goddess bore scars and vines black as obsidian. Lantern light wavered in the gloom. The air reeked of rot and chemical tang. She felt the force pulse, uneven, agonized, and gripped her saber's hilt for comfort. She followed fractured pathways into the ruin's heart. Frosted carvings, once radiant with blessing, now flexed beneath creeping vines. Their inky sap dripped into runic channels, feeding corrupt alchemical circuits hidden beneath stone. A soft hiss drew her to a circular chamber. In its center, an ancient face carved from living rock stared blankly ahead. Veins of crimson sap traced its features, eyes, lips, temples, evoking a perversion of the divine. Elira knelt and placed her palm on the cheek. The face's cold surface trembled, and a wave of sorrow nearly felled her. She whispered a quiet prayer, anchoring her resolve. Beyond, the basin awaited. Its ornate rim, once gilded, was now inscribed with Sith runes. A thin film of mercury blood swirled across its depth. Elira lit her saber. Its violet glow glanced off fragments of glass and metal. Vials broken, ritual blades dulled with age. She recognized the symbols: life subjugation, pain-forged power, and the blueprint for corruption. Then, from the basin's center, the black sword rose, a perfect column of forged night. Its pommel gleamed with faint red pulse, telling of energy bound by cruelty. Elira reached for it, heart pounding. The Force whispered warnings, yet the blade called to her curiosity. She lifted it with the Force, the ground quaking beneath her. In that instant, vines lashed out, whip-like, hungry. Elira ignited her saber and struck a tendril. Dark sap showered the air, its acrid stench searing her senses. She spun, arcs of violet light carving arcs through the growling darkness. Steel met shadow as vines attacked with serpentine speed. Elira sliced through one, then another, but they reformed, knit by alchemical will. She retreated, pressing the black sword against a wall. It hummed, draining her strength as she severed binding roots with her lightsaber's tip. Knowing she could not purge every strand, Elira withdrew a data crystal and dropped it into the basin. As it sank, the crystal transmitted vivid hollow snapshots, runic inscriptions, alchemical vessels, and the corrupted visage. A tremor rocked the temple. Stone pillars shuddered. Vines recoiled, clutching at broken tiles as the crystal completed its upload. She dashed past swirling columns, mist crowding her path, heart pounding with each echo. The shuttle's alarm whined, and Elira sprinted across frost, vines reaching at her cloak. She cleared the final arch as the ruin groaned, sealing its dark heart behind her. Aboard the shuttle, she watched Jarum recede. She pressed the comm. "Masters, I bear proof. A forgotten shrine poisoned by Sith alchemy. Vines crawl with noxious intent, and a dark blade consecrates its ritual. We must cleanse this blight before it spreads." She sealed the message, gaze fixed on the distant haze. Below, the world remained silent, but its corrupted soul would soon be exposed. Elira exhaled slowly, recalling each flicker of darkness in the shrine's heart. In the Force's quiet, she sensed both sorrow and malice intertwined. The data crystal's dim glow carried hope. The Jedi would truly return with cleansing flame. As distant stars winked through the viewport's haze, she vowed no hidden ruin would remain tainted. The Order's light would heal broken stones and banish the alchemist's poison forever. A chill wind swept across the grand plaza at dawn, stirring mist around the spires of the Jedi Temple. Word of Elira's revelation on Jarum had barely spread when a battered shuttle docked at the southern ramp. Inside, Padawan Kaylee Vess stumbled down the ramp, clutching her saber hilt as if anchoring herself to reality. Her robes were singed and stained, face pale with exhaustion and fear. Whispers hushed in the corridors as she was led before the council chamber. Master Orin, still shaped by the debate in hidden heights, stood to receive her. "Padawan Vess," he intoned gently, "we heard your beacon. Tell us what you witnessed." Kaylee inhaled raggedly, voice trembling. "We were surveying the Outer Rim's border, near the ruins of Vostax 9, when we were attacked." She pressed one hand to the dais, knuckles white, and drew a shuddering breath. No warning, no sound. One moment we marched in formation. The next, shadows swept through us. Senator turned Master Lysara leaned forward, eyes widening. "Shadows?" Kaylee nodded, voice barely above a whisper. They moved like mist, not flesh. They passed through the wind without stirring it. She clenched her lightsaber's hilt. Fingers trembled so violently the blade's guard rattled. No footsteps, no trace on the ground. Yet each of us felt a blow before we vanished. A slave pearl of dread cooled the chamber. Master Thalson exchanged a glance with Master Kira. Beyond the frost-veiled windows, Coruscant's skyline gleamed, oblivious to this dark revelation. Kaylee continued, eyes distant. Second Master Joran fell first. His body appeared later, no wounds but inanimate. Then two more disappeared entirely. Only I remained, thrown clear by a silent force, and found unconscious among corpses that bore no kill marks. Pain flickered across her features. I dreamed of a voice chanting in ancient Sith tongues, promising that life itself would yield to shadow. Sillon pressed his palm against his chest, as if to steady his racing heart. "You felt the force drained from the bodies," he said, voice low, "and the attacker wielded no weapon, only darkness." The Padawan's eyes flickered to his. "Yes," she whispered. "A presence that was there and gone." Master Orin closed his eyes, weighing her words. This is unlike any threat we have faced. Sith vibroblades leave no trace, but even they require metal. This, he raised a gloved hand, this entity requires only life. A single torch flickered, illuminating Kaylee's drawn face. The silence stretched until Master Kira,
broke it softly. We believed the Serpent's tongue was limited to cultists and relics. But here, her gaze swept the circle. Here we confront something without form or footprint. We must adapt our defenses. Kaylee's breath caught. It felt cunning, like it knew our minds before we could react. It struck those who hesitated, then faded like a ghost. She swallowed. I beg you, send others to find survivors. Learn what it is. Do not leave this to chance. Lysara rose, torchlight glinting in her eyes. Her testimony shatters complacency, she said, voice like a clarion. The High Republic has never faced an enemy so elusive. We must convene our task force at once. Orin nodded gravely. By nightfall, every hidden hall will be swept. Patrols will roam the shadows of Coruscant. We will learn what hunts us, and end it. He turned to Kaylee. Your courage serves as warning and guide. Rest now, Padawan, and regain your strength. Kaylee bowed, stepping back into the corridor. As she departed, she glanced once more through the frosted window at the silver city below, a bastion that might not survive this new darkness. Her trembling grip on the saber reminded her that fear could fracture the mind, but testimony could forge unity. Behind her, the council remained framed against the window's chill glass. Torchlight flickered, silhouettes resolved into determined figures. Their resolve hardened like tempered steel. They would confront this silent assassin until not a shadow remained. Outside, the wind carried Kaylee's final words into the dawn, a plea that awakened the Jedi's vigilance and reshaped the High Republic's fate. Night had fallen when a squad of 4 Jedi, Masters Silan and Kira, Padawans Phalis and Rena, stormed aboard the Firehawk, a repurposed gunship of crimson steel. Coordination was silent, lightsabers dim until drawn. Reports spoke of a Sith cell hidden within the swirling storms of Forax 9 in the outer rim. Their mission: strike swiftly, secure evidence, and eliminate the threat before it faded into shadow. The Firehawk descended through thunderheads, leaving starlight behind. Forax 9's atmosphere crackled with savage storms. Bolts of blue lightning split the clouds, dancing across the barren plains. The shuttle's hull groaned with each impact of wind and particle rain. Below, jagged spires of obsidian rock jutted from flooded craters. Lightning illuminated swirling dust devils, revealing no signs of life, only storm and promise of hidden danger. At the drop zone, the Jedi disembarked into chaos. Warnings crackled over comms. Sensors detected crystalline formations scattered across the storm-blasted rock. These were not natural deposits, but pedestals for force-discharging crystals, each designed to harvest ambient energy and unleash destructive arcs. Silan knelt, scanning jagged nodes with his hollow probe. Phalis held her saber aloft in readiness. The air bristled with latent power, tinged by unnatural resonance. The Jedi advanced toward a crater rim where dozens of crystalline nodes clustered like jagged teeth. Before they could disable one, a surge of blue lightning arced across the plain, raw force energy unleashed from the crystals. The blast shattered rock and ripped through shields, leaving scorched patterns on armor. Jaw collapsed first, convulsing beneath a static storm. Phalis barely caught him, eyes wide with alarm. Rena knelt beside the nearest node, her gloved hand dancing through the force to pry the crystal loose. Silan and Kaylee slashed roots of dark energy that held it in place. Phalis focused her mind, channeling light to neutralize the discharge.
Each crystal hummed, crackling bursts of blue energy across the ground. The air smelled of ozone and fear as the Jedi pressed their advantage. Deeper into the storm-blasted plain, the Jedi discovered a stone obelisk ringed by 7 crystal pillars. Each pillar thrummed with potential, drawn from Sith-tainted cores. Syllan extended a palm, feeling malefic currents. "These nodes power the cell," he warned. Phalis and Rena moved to sever glowing conduits at the base. With precise strikes, they shattered 3 pillars, light roaring free before collapsing under their dark weight. Then, red haze blossomed from the shattered bases. The crystals drew lightning from the storm above, channeling torrents of raw force energy that crackled skyward. Jaw, recovered but shaken, raised a shield to protect Kaylee, only to have the arc leap overhead, ripping her braid from its clasp. Phalis threw herself across Elira to absorb backlash. Pain seared them both, but their shields held. Amid the crackling silence that followed, Elira swiftly retrieved the black sword and deposited a single crystal shard into a datapod. Syllan gathered the remaining fragments, wrapping them in protective field tape. Each shard hummed with residual power, a testament to Sith corruption. Phalis accessed her comlink. "We have archival proof and living evidence." The Jedi secured their positions and prepared to depart. Propelled by dread, the shuttle's engines roared as Elira, Syllan, and Phalis ascended into stormy skies, the battered plane shrinking beneath them. Crystals and the black sword, secured in the hold, would reveal the Sith cell's machinations. As lightning forked across distant clouds, Phalis said, "Next time, we will strike the heart of this cult." Syllan nodded. The hunt continues, deeper into shadow, ever onward forward. Lightning had faded into memory, but the trail it illuminated led the Jedi home. Days after the Forax raid, scattered reports and intercepted frequencies triangulated one final signal, originating deep beneath the Jedi temple itself. A secret, long whispered. A name never spoken aloud. The Serpent's Eye. In the temple's underfoundations, beyond sealed halls and forgotten ossuaries, an access gate flickered open at midnight. Only 2 Jedi entered. Master Syllan and Padawan Phalis, cloaked in silence. Their sabers unlit, their breath held. The catacombs twisted in near-total darkness, only the whisper of footsteps echoing against age-worn stone. Lights flickered overhead, old temple power lines flickering with intermittent energy. Glyphs lined the walls, older than Republic standard, etched into columns that had not seen light since before the Great Hyperspace War. At their center stood a narrow arch flanked by twin statues, one Jedi, one Sith, both worn faceless by time. Phalis paused, her hand brushing the Sith statue's base. "I feel something watching." Syllan nodded. The eye opens from within. With a single breath, they crossed the arch and entered the Chamber of Echoes. A domed room stretched wide, its ceiling rising like the inside of a temple bell. Columns circled the outer edge, but the center remained bare, save for a single pedestal and the faintest flicker of crimson light. From the shadows stepped a figure in dark robes, face masked in matte silver, eyes hidden. The force stilled around them like air before a storm. They moved with precision, measured, unhurried. "You seek truth," the voice echoed, distorted, female yet altered. "You should have stayed blind." Phalis ignited her saber instantly.
the chamber lit with blue light, casting long shadows across ancient stone. The figure stepped closer, unflinching. "You already know me," she said. "You just hoped it wasn't true." Scylan circled wide. "The Acolyte. You've been feeding the Serpent's tongue. You stole the holocrons, planted evidence, guided the toxins into our sanctums." She tilted her head. "I preserved balance through truth, Master Scylan. Just not yours." Then her hand moved, slow as a falling leaf, and from her sleeve dropped the hilt of a saber carved with runic bands. A hiss, a flash. Red light bloomed. The scarlet blade bathed the chamber in blood-hued glow. Phalis froze. In the assassin's mirrored visor, she saw her own stunned reflection, alongside the blazing saber, reflected in twin pupils, visible now behind the mask's lower slats. Recognition flared like fire. "You were Jedi," she whispered. "I trained with you at the Pillar Gardens." The assassin lowered the saber a fraction. "Once, before I listened." She struck. Blade met blade in a thunderclap of energy. Phalis held fast, pressed back as the assassin's strikes moved with clinical fury. Scylan moved to flank, golden saber lighting the rear columns. Sparks erupted as stone shattered and robes whipped in the eddying air. The assassin leapt and spun, force-fueled, parrying Scylan and redirecting toward Phalis. Each strike was a lesson. Each breath laced with a whisper of doctrine twisted. Feel, doubt, release, become more. Phalis countered. Memories rising. Training matches. Sparring rings. Shared study. "You let the dark feed your pride," she hissed. "But you were never stronger than us. You never saw clearly enough to understand." A final parry. Phalis angled her blade and sliced low. The assassin leapt back, cloak torn, visor cracked. A single gleaming eye glared out, pupil black, iris red. In that moment, the mask fell away. A face revealed. Not monstrous, human, young, barely older than Phalis. A former Padawan long presumed lost, one thought slain in the Outer Rim siege, returned and reborn as the eye of the Serpent. For a heartbeat, all held still. The assassin smiled, soft, almost sorrowful. This was never about vengeance. This is evolution. And with a blast of force energy, she vanished through a hidden corridor. Phalis staggered forward. Scylan caught her, breath thin. "She was one of us," Phalis said. "And now she's something else entirely." Scylan deactivated his saber. This wasn't just infiltration. It was initiation. She's a beginning, not the end. They turned from the now silent chamber, heartbeats still echoing with the clash of saber and ideology. Behind them, the light of the red blade lingered like an after-image burned into the stone. The Jedi Council would debate the assassin's identity for weeks. Files would be reopened, footage enhanced. But the truth had already been felt in every parried strike and every whispered creed. The Sith had not merely returned. They had grown inside the very soil of the Jedi, nourished by silence. The pedestal in the Chamber of Echoes would be sealed, wards placed, but it would not be forgotten. Phalis kept a shard of the assassin's cracked visor, hidden in her robes, not as a trophy, but a reminder. One of them had fallen not by force, but by belief twisted,
In time, that truth would fester into policy, vigilance, and fear. And in the darkness, far from Coruscant's light, another memory stirred. One not born of blades or masks, but of careful words, long shadows, and the manipulation of fate itself. As the Acolyte's blade falls silent, the galaxy's deeper rot emerges, planted long ago by a master of fear and longevity. We now turn to the Sith Lord, whose careful designs seeded the coming empire. In the shadowed epochs before the Clone Wars, beneath the surface of worlds forgotten or forbidden, there existed a chamber untouched by sunlight. There, in the damp stillness of synthetic air and biolights, Darth Plagueis meditated not on conquest, but on eternity. He did not pace the halls of the Senate. He did not roar over fallen enemies. He listened, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, in the strange vibrations of the Force that others dared not notice. He was no cloaked warrior striding through fire. He was something colder, a seeker, a scholar, a Sith not content to destroy others, but determined to overcome death itself. The galaxy knew little of Moonilinst's banking clans, and less still of their hidden enclaves. Plagueis, born Hego Damask, was raised among ledgers and logic, trained to calculate interest across centuries. But beyond fiscal prophecy, he hungered for the forbidden. In time, the Sith found him, and in their hidden manuscripts, he found his purpose. His study led him beyond Sith dogma. On the edges of wild space, he hunted ancient texts locked behind encrypted holocrons. Many so old, even the Sith Lords of old dared not unseal them. His obsession deepened when he learned what the Jedi never fully grasped. The midichlorians, microscopic life forms entangled with the Force, were not passive. They could be shaped. So he built his sanctum beneath Sojourn, in a sealed vault of biotic glass and magnetic shielding. Here the walls pulsed with rhythmic light, matching the heartbeat of specimens suspended in fluid. Test tubes coiled through the ceiling like veins. Some contained rare ichor drawn from Force-rich worlds. Others shimmered with the broken essence of creatures bred in twisted alchemy. To those few he permitted entry, it resembled a necromancer's workshop. It was closer to a cradle. For Plagueis believed he was giving birth to a future where no Sith need die, where the will of one could bend not only minds and empires, but life and death itself. He mapped midichlorian colonies inside blood samples, manipulating their density through carefully tuned sonic resonance and chemical stimulation. He watched as test subjects, humanoid, clone, even animal, resisted aging, then withered all at once when balance slipped. The Force was not pleased with his arrogance. More than once, the lab's glow dimmed without cause, the test tubes frothing into rage. Yet he persisted, undeterred. Rumors whispered of his travels to Mortis, the realm beyond time, where embodiments of the Force, father, son, and daughter, had once ruled. Few believed the dimension could be accessed again. Fewer still knew Plagueis had tried. Through hollow fractures, he studied reality's distortions where time unraveled and mortality weakened. Survivors of those excursions spoke of hours stretching into centuries, and of visions that lingered when he returned. Eyes unblinking, mind quieter, his presence heavier. He returned to Sojourn and changed nothing of his approach, only refining it. Fear is a path to death, he once intoned. One experiment outlasted the others. A life form constructed of manipulated genes and Force-infused cells survived its own decay.
It lived in stillness, suspended in biogel, eyes open but unseeing. Plagueis regarded it not as failure, but as question. "Does it dream?" he asked aloud. "And if it does, can I dream through it?" The living sculpture responded only to his presence, its heart pulsing in time with the vault's lighting. For days he studied its silent vigil, searching for clues to imprint his consciousness onto its form. But when he attempted to bind his essence, the bond snapped, leaving him drained and haunted by glimpses of other existences. Sometimes he woke in his meditation chamber surrounded by shattered glass and flickering holocrons, destroyed not by intrusion, but by a force reaction he could not name. He wondered if life itself pushed back. In parallel, he explored mechanical extensions of his research, sentinel droids infused with dark side rites. In hidden workshops beneath Abora's volcanic surface, he fused alchemical compounds into wiring harnesses. These constructs obeyed without question, their servitude anchored by arcane rituals. He tested whether such vessels could host fragments of consciousness, another pathway to transcendence beyond flesh. And still, he pressed onward. In time, he would take a student, an eager vessel for both power and politics. He would nurture that apprentice in economic cunning and interstellar intrigue, withholding the secrets forged in Sojourn's depths. Some truths, especially those born of immortal thirst, were too potent to share at once. Plagueis never spoke of legacy. He spoke of permanence. He sought to author not just policy, but fate. Not just empires, but existence itself. Beneath the glowing breath of biolights among the whispering tubes, he sang his hymn, Life Unending, not by miracle, but by method. The galaxy did not yet feel the consequence. But already, in the subtlest currents of the Force, a ripple had begun, one that would soon crash upon the stars. Even as Plagueis pursued immortality in his hidden sanctum, his fingers traced silent patterns across Coruscant's highest councils. Power, he understood, flowed not only through the Force, but through ledgers, decrees, and whispered confidences in gilded corridors. And there, he found his greatest instrument, young Sheev Palpatine of Naboo. The boy senator arrived on Coruscant as an idealist wrapped in silvered rhetoric. Lords and ladies admired his measured cadence, delegates warmed to his polite humility. Yet Plagueis glimpsed the steel beneath, the still center of a perfect storm. He summoned Palpatine to a concealed suite above the Senate Plaza, where the endless cityscape shimmered like a starfield. Two cloaked figures crossed the threshold, one young, the other ageless, both reflections in polished obsidian. "Influence is not seized," Plagueis whispered, voice drifting like a breeze through columns. "It is invited. Create a vacuum, and others will rush to fill it." His words curled around the senator's mind, planting seeds destined to bloom in political soil. Their lessons began simply: observe. Palpatine sat in open committees cloaked as listener, noting which delegates commanded deference and which wore ambition like armor. He learned whose pleas stemmed from principle and whose from fear of losing power. Plagueis provided dossiers, profiles of voting blocks, credit histories of planetary representatives, even personal vices concealed from public view. When mid-rim senators threatened to break trade agreements, Plagueis engineered a shortage of synthetic fuel by redirecting core tunneling machinery. Starliners slowed, temper flared, and delegates found themselves cornered in endless debates. Into that breach Palpatine stepped, offering emergency, reform, legislation drafted in Plagueis's hand. Minimal concessions, maximum oversight. He spoke of unity, of saving thousands of lives, and won applause when senators ratified measures that bound their own voices. No public record linked Palpatine to the chaos he quelled. Such credit belonged to unseen committees, convened at Plagueis' urging, then quietly dissolved. Political analysts praised the young senator's empathy, calling him a diplomat for turbulent times. Only Plagueis smiled at the true outcome. In one secret session beneath the Senate's sublevels, Plagueis guided Palpatine through the labyrinth of Republic finance. Holographic charts of revenue streams and trade tariffs shimmered in the gloom. Always present yourself as servant, the Master instructed, but ensure every servant answers to you. A gentle modulation of budget allocations here, a slight increase in security levies there. Each adjustment funneled credits into shell corporations controlled by moon proxies. Worlds grew quietly dependent on loans they could not repay. Senators appointed as overseers owed Palpatine their livelihoods. Meanwhile, when Naboo's royal entourage hesitated to condemn the Trade Federation's blockade, Plagueis' agents stoked protests in Theed's plazas. Hidden saboteurs disrupted referendum amplifiers. Merchant ships delayed essential imports. Discontent swelled. From the stage of an emergency session, Palpatine denounced lawlessness cloaked in commerce and called for sovereign oversight. His words swayed former skeptics, and his motion passed by a narrow margin, an outcome that cemented his reputation as defender of peace. At each turn, Plagueis honed Palpatine's public persona. "Compassion is your greatest illusion," he confided in hushed tones during their observatory meetings. "Show mercy, but withhold its depth. Let them thirst for your grace." Palpatine learned to drape his amendments in noble language while constricting liberties at their roots. He spoke of fairness, even as he reshaped laws to favor concentrated power. Senators praised his integrity. Only Plagueis knew the true ledger. Their gatherings grew rare yet more charged. In the Chancellor's private meditation suite, usually reserved for quiet reflection, two silhouettes leaned over a table strewn with holodiscs. City lights blurred behind them as they traced the next shift in policy. An outstanding proposal to reform the Senate's membership quotas, quietly designed to amplify core world influence at the expense of outlying systems. When the bill reached debate, it passed amid cries of efficiency and progress, though anonymous voices warned of veiled monopolies. Even the Jedi Council sensed a disturbance. Master Ord Ennis heard rumors of diplomatic missions that never returned, while Master Satele Shan noted unusual alignments in mid-Senate caucuses, patterns too synchronized for natural alliance. Yet every probe unraveled against bureaucratic red tape. Plagueis had taught Palpatine the art of plausible deniability better than any Sith apprentice had before, and Palpatine thrived. Senators once indifferent to the Naboo delegation now hailed him as their champion. His speeches became Senate law, masterclasses in coaxing fear and hope in equal measure. He never raised a saber, yet he broke foes with the force of rhetoric. He never led armies, yet his mandates redrew battlefronts of commerce and influence. But within this perfect union between master and pupil, a quiet friction took root. Plagueis, ever meticulous, began to sense a shift in Palpatine's responses, an impatience beneath the polish. The pupil no longer asked for oversight. He began to anticipate. Proposals once spoon-fed now arrived fully formed, accompanied by terse hollows from Palpatine's personal archives. On the night before a crucial vote to grant Palpatine emergency powers as Supreme Chancellor, Plagueis summoned him one last time. In the secluded observatory, they spoke not of policy, but of destiny. "My apprentice," Plagueis intoned, Our work advances. The Republic will kneel, and the Sith will rule unseen. But promise me this: do not forget why you began.
Palpatine looked out at the glittering cityscape, then back at his master. His reply was a soft vow. I will bring order. But beneath his calm mask, ambition glimmered like a blade. Plagueis watched him go, knowing the moment had come when a student's lesson must end. In the hushed corridors of power, two legacies intertwined, one seeking unending life, the other forging endless dominion. The storm they'd conjured would soon break, tipping the galaxy into an age neither had fully imagined. Yet as Palpatine's silhouette vanished among the Senate's spires, Plagueis realized too late that teaching precision to genius had shaped something far beyond his control. The blueprint of an empire had become a living masterpiece, one he might soon regret composing. Palpatine's name, once little more than a footnote in Naboo's noble registries, began appearing on Senate rosters more frequently, quietly, methodically. He did not arrive with fanfare, nor ride the swell of public demand. Instead, he was offered, invited, a solution to indecision, a calm presence amid chaos. And behind that rise, invisible as ever, moved the careful hand of Darth Plagueis. In the early days of Palpatine's political career, no dramatic speeches heralded his ascent. No confrontations stirred the chamber floor. His weapon was silence, and Plagueis taught him to wield it well. The commissions were small at first: trade advisory boards, cultural exchange forums, and relief oversight groups, many of which held no real power. But Plagueis knew these minor stages were perfect proving grounds. Within these dull sessions of committee procedure and bureaucratic minutiae, Palpatine refined the arts that would one day unmake the Republic. He learned when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. He mastered the rhythm of subtle approval, the surgical use of a well-timed objection, the art of influence without ownership. Others believed they had made the decision. In truth, they had merely followed the gravity he created. Behind every appointment came Plagueis's shadow. Through anonymous donations, veiled economic suggestions, or sudden vacancies born of accidents too convenient to be coincidence, doors opened, votes tipped by a whisper, proposals failed by a margin just narrow enough to seem organic. Even when opposing blocs celebrated small victories, they were dancing in a pattern Plagueis had already drawn. Deep within core world towers, where senators gathered behind encrypted walls and mirrored windows, holographic voting panels lit up with sterile precision. Each button press sent a ripple into the Senate's foundation. Palpatine stood in these rooms often, never at the center, always beside someone influential, never commanding, only advising. And as decisions unfolded exactly as forecast, he gained a reputation. The senator who always knew the temperature before the vote. You shape a current, not a flood, Plagueis told him during one such session, the chamber humming with the light of 1,000 projections. A sudden storm draws suspicion. A steady tide reshapes the coast. Palpatine listened. And so, his name appeared next on the Naval Resources Board, tasked with overseeing regional defense appropriations. Then, the Diplomatic Reconciliation Council, where he quietly orchestrated failure between feuding systems, each breakdown offering him more oversight, more leverage. Then came the Sector Transition Authority, a hollow title masking enormous sway over shipping routes and communications infrastructure. All the while, Plagueis remained unseen, but never uninvolved. Through interbank guilds, he manipulated currency flows that choked or fueled entire sectors.
He staged economic collapses with the elegance of a musician changing key. When unrest flared, Palpatine arrived with measured sympathy and ready answers. Not always correct, just sufficient. These calculated failures were essential. They offered the illusion of struggle, of fallibility, of humanity. Plagueis had instructed him well. They must think you could have been one of them, that you simply chose better. On the surface, Palpatine still played the role of the dignified Naboo representative, well-spoken, composed, reluctant to seek command. But behind closed doors, among the galaxy's hidden brokers, his name carried weight. He had no throne, yet entire policy trees grew from his suggestions. He was, in effect, the first puppet, yet one who slowly learned to pull his own strings. The Senate never realized it was being bound.
Not yet.
That day would come, when titles like Supreme Chancellor and Emergency Powers would no longer sound strange upon his tongue. But for now, it was enough to whisper, to sway, to watch as power gravitated to him as if by nature's own hand. In the dim silence of a private tower, Palpatine once looked out over Coruscant's endless lights and said aloud, "I see the galaxy already bending." Plagueis, sitting behind him in the dark, replied, "That is not the galaxy. That is your reflection." Even as Palpatine's ascent gained momentum in the polished halls of the Senate, Plagueis retreated ever deeper into silence. Not out of fear, but reverence. For it was in silence that the true work began, not in votes or treaties, but in forgotten chants and blood-etched symbols, in relics unearthed from tombs the Jedi had failed to seal. While the galaxy marveled at rising senators and shifting alliances, Plagueis descended into chambers built before the Republic's founding. Vaults hidden beneath sojourn, under sediment and false asteroids, behind sonic locks that could not be sliced. These vaults held what few dared speak of: Sith holocrons. Not the half-fractured data cubes peddled by collectors or scattered acolytes. These were true repositories, dark pyramids, spiked orbs, angular prisms crafted in the image of ancient torment. Each contained a consciousness, a preserved echo of a Sith who had mastered something the galaxy was not ready to understand. Plagueis did not collect them for curiosity. He studied them for synthesis, for possibility. He lined the chamber with obsidian stone, etched with alchemical bindings. A dais in the center bore old battle scarring, runes from failed rituals still faintly glowing when touched. The holocrons hovered above, suspended in quiet rotation, emitting whispers only he could hear. They were not passive. They debated, challenged. Some tried to manipulate him. Others begged to be destroyed. But Plagueis listened, and he learned. There was Darth Nihilus, whose hunger could drain worlds, whose spirit clung still to a black prism bound in iron rings. Darth Tenebrous, whose own research into midi-chlorian influence sparked Plagueis's earliest questions, now reduced to mocking laughter in crystalline echo. And deeper still, holocrons of Sith, not named in any Jedi archive, lords whose temples had crumbled into dust before Yavin's calendar began. Their voices clashed in the void, weaving a symphony of ruin. Plagueis recorded each theory, dissected each contradiction. He did not worship them. He outpaced them. Using advanced biochemistry, he merged ritual with science, testing force-altered viruses, splicing midi-chlorian commands with living tissue. One holocron revealed an old ritual to freeze time within a subject's cells. Another described Kyber-based resonance techniques for preserving thought across cloned bodies. Together they formed something new. He built vats ringed with runes, where force-sensitive biomass was cultured under red starlight. He developed breath-reactive solutions, fluids that shifted density based on emotional states. These weren't weapons, they were bridges, links between spirit, flesh, and idea. To outsiders, it was madness. To Plagueis, it was harmony. It was the missing key in Sith evolution. But not all knowledge welcomed integration. When he activated the holocron of Zendor, believed destroyed in the first Great Schism, his chamber shook with an energy not born of the physical. Lights dimmed, the holocrons screamed, the dais cracked anew. And for 3 days, Plagueis did not leave the vault. When he emerged, robes torn, his eyes burned with new clarity. He spoke not of what he saw, but the next morning, he reconfigured every experiment. He began isolating the holocrons, placing dampeners on their rotation. Some were entombed again, too dangerous even for him. The others he connected to new conduits, ones that could be accessed only through force harmonics and biometric keys bound to his own presence. In time, he reduced the cacophony to singular threads. What had once been a chamber of chaos became a temple of careful orchestration. Palpatine never saw these relics, not directly. He asked once, but Plagueis said, "Power without discipline is noise. You are not ready to hear the past arguing with itself." And so, the apprentice remained unaware of how deep the roots had gone. Plagueis knew what the old Sith did not. Their obsession with domination blinded them to refinement. They hoarded power, he distilled it. They screamed of conquest, he whispered of transcendence. Yet even as he surpassed them, he could feel their warnings in the air. A tension, a thread pulled too tight, as if the knowledge he assembled was resisting unification. Still, he pressed forward. His dream was no longer to kill death. It was to make death a choice. And in his vault, beneath stars that would never shine, he believed himself on the edge of eternity. The workshop was not on any map. Even among Sith relics and secret vaults, the fortress on Abora remained unique, hidden in a volcanic crescent where no life registered, its presence shielded by electromagnetic storms and the deceptive quiet of a dead world. Here, Darth Plagueis established his true sanctum. Not a laboratory, not a temple, a crucible, a theater of becoming. Those who came here came to be reshaped. The fortress's core chamber was a great circular hall, its walls embedded with glowing vats of unknown origin. Each contained a failure or a marvel, forms that twisted against glass, humanoid and not, suspended in an eternal loop of regeneration or decay. Light pulsed from beneath the floor in irregular patterns, tied to the breath and thought of the structure itself. Some claimed the workshop had been grown, not built, rooted in the dark will of its master. This was where Plagueis refined the knowledge gleaned from forbidden holocrons, where he merged theory with function, and where apprentices were broken, tested, and, if worthy, reborn. His teachings were not offered in lectures. They were trials, conducted in silence, through moments of unbearable pressure. One such test began without warning. The apprentice would wake to find a clone of themselves seated across a table. Each had been imprinted with the same memories, the same pain, the same hunger. Only one would be permitted to leave. The other, fed to the vats. Another trial occurred inside the mind room. There, black obsidian columns emitted low frequencies that clouded thought, while Plagueis fed illusions directly into the subconscious. The mind became a battlefield where the apprentice fought themselves. Shadows of failure, imagined betrayals, even distorted echoes of Plagueis himself whispering doubts. Those who resisted the projections learned to shield their thoughts. Those who succumbed were reprogrammed and tried again, or discarded. In this chamber, memory lost meaning. Apprentices aged without aging. Some claimed to see visions of the future or the past, or fragments of both converging in dreams they could no longer wake from. Plagueis took careful note of those who cracked. He studied failure as keenly as success. And then came the trials of prolongation. These were reserved only for those who had endured every other torment and emerged sharpened. They involved exposure to force-saturated biofluids derived from Plagueis's earliest research into midi-chlorian manipulation. The process was unstable, extending life in some cases, accelerating decay in others. But the point was never merely survival. It was transformation. Few passed these rites. Even fewer retained their minds intact. Throughout it all, Plagueis watched, not with cruelty, but precision. He considered himself less a master, more a composer. Every scream, every failure, every flicker of resistance or revelation was a note in his grand symphony. He kept no traditional Sith archives here, no grand statues of self-glorification. The only monument was the chamber itself. The vats, the corridors, the echoing halls, all bore witness to decades of shaping potential into purpose. His purpose. Palpatine visited only once. Brought in under storm and silence, the young politician was escorted through the passageways. He said nothing as he passed the vats, his eyes lingering on the forms within. When Plagueis showed him the mind room, he simply bowed his head and said, "I do not need to enter. I have already learned to become the lie." Plagueis had smiled slightly. He needed no further proof. That day, he called Palpatine not by name, but by title. Darth Sidious. And thus, the apprentice stepped beyond politics and fully into shadow. The workshop remained. Its lights pulsed slower after that. The chambers cooled. There would be no more students, only observation. For now, Plagueis believed, the final test was near. Not for others, for himself. He had passed on knowledge, planted seeds, twisted the galaxy's future into a shape only he could recognize. And deep within the halls of his hidden workshop, among the humming vats and pale bones of discarded possibilities, the Maestro prepared to write his coda. The hidden corridors of Plagueis's fortress fell silent after Darth Sidious's naming. In the aftermath, the vats ceased their restless churn, and the echoing halls seemed to hold their breath. It was time. Master and apprentice would meet one last time, not in the controlled trials of the workshop, but in the final arena where power decided all. Palpatine moved through the shadows, footsteps soft on obsidian floors. At the heart of the fortress, an antechamber awaited, a circular room ringed by Gothic arches and columns, slick with condensation. A pale glow spilled from a central dais. There, Plagueis stood, his robes drifting in the faint luminescence. His back was to the entrance, but his posture betrayed no unease. He had expected this moment for decades. "My lord," Palpatine began, voice steady, "I have studied every teaching you offered. I have honed them beyond your design." Plagueis turned, pale eyes reflecting the dais's light. He did not speak at once. He examined the apprentice who had surpassed every trial, who had absorbed every secret and transcended the teacher's own limitations. "You have become remarkable," the Sith Lord finally said. "But you misunderstand my gift. Knowledge is only power,
when wielded with wisdom. Sidious's smile was thin. He ignited his saber then, a blade of crimson that cut through the half-light. The glow painted two faces onto the walls, one sculpted by years of hidden study, the other molded by unrelenting ambition. "In wisdom, you taught me patience," Sidious whispered, saber humming. "In ambition, I learned the truth." He stepped forward. Plagueis remained still, letting the blade's light dance across his age-lined features. The apprentice advanced, each step echoing. His resolve was unwavering. "I will not fear the darkness within. I will command it." Plagueis raised an eyebrow. "And you believe killing me seals your destiny?" With a sudden surge, Sidious lunged, blade slicing through the air. Plagueis ignited his own saber, a deep violet shimmer, and their crimson and violet arcs met in a shower of sparks. The clash rang through the chamber, a violent counterpoint to the fortress's usual hush. Master and apprentice circled one another, saber strikes precise yet infused with restrained force. Each blow was both lesson and betrayal. Plagueis flowed with the strikes, testing Sidious's form, his mind probing for hesitation. But Sidious held none. "You taught me to harness life, to transcend mortality," Sidious said, voice cold. "But you spared no thought for my own ascendancy." Plagueis's expression shifted, grief perhaps, or a distant pride. "My ambition was never to be replaced," he murmured. "It was to endure." Sidious's blade pressed against Plagueis's chest, the red glow warm on black silk. "And endure you must not." He unleashed a torrent of force lightning, sharp, jagged, crackling between them. Plagueis staggered, pain flickering in his eyes. Lightning lanced through the chamber, fracturing the floor. Yet in that moment, Plagueis smiled. "I underestimated you, at last." Before Sidious could recover, Plagueis channeled his own mastery, an ancient final trick. He reached for Sidious's mind, probing for weakness. Instead of hesitation, he found resolve. The connection had shifted, apprentice to master. Sidious felt Plagueis's essence seize his thoughts, then nothing. A heartbeat later, Sidious stood alone. Plagueis lay collapsed, eyes closed, no longer breathing. The violet blade lay extinguished beside him. The red glow died last, sputtering like a dying star. Sidious deactivated his saber, the snap echoing. He gently retrieved the holocron from his robes, then looked at the fallen mentor. No triumph warmed his features, only cold clarity. "The apprentice inherits the throne at the teacher's fall," he murmured. Behind him, rivers flowed beneath the cracked pillars. The air thrummed with latent energy, a reminder that even masters fall. In the silence that followed, only ambition remained. He turned and left the chamber, stepping into a world now reshaped by his designs. The Maestro's workshop would remain, its halls empty, silent, awaiting the next whisper of power. In the silent vaults of galactic finance, an unseen hand wove the first threads of imperial dominion. Before saber clashes or public drama, Palpatine's master orchestrated fortunes through coded exchanges and brokered deals. Credits slipped like liquid starlight through the fingers of corrupt senators and trade lords. Each transaction, each dispute, carried the faint echo of Plagueis's design, a careful erosion of Republic stability. He began with the intergalactic banking clan, its ledgers vast enough to engulf entire sectors. Secret meetings in cold spires bore whispered assurances.
Loans extended to struggling worlds at exacting interest, collateral hidden in shell corporations. Planets like Kuat and Mon Cala found their shipyards pledged as security. Disputes flared over shipping lanes and delivery quotas. Republic coffers groaned. Politicians argued open markets until they became prey to speculation. Then came the trade federations, once mere cartels, now instruments of fiscal warfare. Plagueis seeded family rivalries, fueling tariff battles that bled planetary economies. He financed one faction with debts that could never be repaid, then bargained for policy reforms in exchange for relief. Legislators, swayed by credit and crisis, rerouted trade lanes to serve his network. Amid this silent onslaught, commodity markets became deliberate battlefields. On Ryloth, cloned blights devoured spice crops overnight, crippling exports. Chandrila's silk cargoes rotted in stasis holds, blamed on system failures. Prices soared, provoking emergency grain shipments and material loans from Republic reserves. Palpatine's speeches lauded his benevolence. His treasury processed relief credits, unknowingly tightening Plagueis's invisible noose. Techno-union contracts were inflated and paid from hidden Sith accounts, binding industrial guilds to Plagueis's design. World Bank officials noted rising insolvency rates among planetary governments, but each report was buried beneath agendas. Plagueis planted advisors in banks, guiding risk assessments to favor Republic bonds. Worlds saw credit ratings slump, and Sith-backed hedge funds seized assets through arbitration courts. Even judicial systems bowed to his silent will. In the hidden records of the Ministry of Finance, encrypted ledgers detailed interstellar bonds sold at speculative rates. One world defaulted. The Imperial Treasury absorbed the loss. Colonial revenues funneled back through agencies controlled by Plagueis's operatives. Fragments of credit returned as investments in essential industries, food production on Naboo, hyperspace mapping on Corellia, mining technology on Onderon, ensuring dependency. When the Senate debated disaster relief funding, Palpatine rose with eloquence and calm compassion. His oratory resonated with hope, even as the budget deficit widened beneath him. Worlds clamored for aid. Loans multiplied. Another planet buckled. Another debt seized. Plagueis watched those sessions with the satisfaction of a maestro overseeing his final movement. Key star systems glowed on Plagueis's private trade grid. Blinking nodes over Ord Mantell, Cato Nemoidia, Saleukami. Credits flowing through intricate channels, each pulse charted and categorized. Resistance, compliance, and rarely, recovery. When a node faltered, Plagueis responded with discrete adjustments, an interest cut here, a sudden commodities shipment there, or a staged embargo to spur demand. Each move widened his sway. Even the Jedi, preoccupied with whispers of Sith cults, felt tremors of these ripples. A mission to secure medical supplies against an outbreak became mired in trade disputes engineered by Sith intermediaries. By the time the Council intervened, markets had shifted, and Republic negotiators chased ghosts. When Plagueis died, his economic web did not unravel. The syndicates bound to his design continued to function, their leaders unaware of the dark architect now gone. The trade federations and banking clan upheld policies favorable to Sidious's emerging empire. Economic levers once hidden became visible as they sealed the galaxy's fate. Many Republic systems were already indebted. No fleet blockaded them. Servitude was purchased through credit and crisis. In those blinking trade grids, the seed of empire sprouted, and Republic's final days were written in red.